Number 9. Stark Raving Mad. Wonder what Neil Patrick Harris was doing before How I Met Your Mother? Wonder what Tony Shalhoub did before Monk? This short-lived NBC show, except extremely underrated. Neil Patrick Harris plays Henry, a novel editor who has borderline obsessive-compulsive disorder. No, but pretty damn close. His boss gives him a promotion one day, and at first he's happy about it. But then she tells him who he's going to be stuck with. Enter Ian Stark, eccentric horror novelist. His problem is that he has constant writer's block and can't get a story straight. So in his spare time he does some crazy fucked up shit.
Boy, I'm so sorry. Oh, that is no way to make a good first impression.
Hey, I never knew David Carradine was on this show. Did I mention that this was a sitcom? For as fucked up as that! It's a pretty decent show. It's a good-hearted sitcom about the clash of different personalities. Yeah, it sounds old and stale, but it's really likable. These two guys bring the best out of each other. Or the worst. Yeah, sure, it's underrated, but at least it won an award. The most cursed award at the People's Choice Award ceremony. Best New TV Comedy. Any sitcom that wins that award will get in trouble and will be short-lived on the air. 1 or 2 seasons, tops. Joey? Shit My Dad Says? Gary Unmarried? Samantha Who? The Class? All those shows got cancelled after winning those awards. Coincidence? Sadly, this show won that award, and after 1 full season, got cancelled shortly after. It's underrated, yet I have mixed feelings about this cancellation. On one hand, apparently it didn't make an impact on anybody and nobody watched this show. But let's keep this honest. If this show were still on today, Neil Patrick Harris wouldn't have been Barney Stinson on How I Met Your Mother, and Tony Shalhoub wouldn't have been Adrian Monk on Monk. So technically, it all worked out for the best. The cancellation of the show got them more popular. I never knew that was even possible. But still, sadly, the show remains underrated. So if you want to see Doogie Howser and Monk star in a short-lived sitcom together, please watch this show. Because it's absolutely mad.
Oh, that is no way to make a good first impression.
Number 8. Puppets Who Kill. God damn it, I love this show. This is my favorite dark comedy of my life. The show's about 4 puppets who create various crimes and end up in jail. Since prison can't hold them, they end up in the halfway house. Enter Dan, a social worker who takes control of the halfway house. He's constantly at odds with the puppets, but they're puppets. But then again, he's in the house with psychotic puppets. Does that seem a little odd to you? This show is like Alf if he committed several crimes in his career. In fact, I constantly thought that Alf was gonna come on this show and be outrageous. You know, he could be obsessed with cocaine and rob a bank, but it doesn't matter. When this show started, I was still in elementary school, and I loved every minute of it, and I wanted to watch every new episode that came on Friday nights. All these characters in one roof provide for pure insanity. You got Cuddles the Comfort Doll. He was created to help people with their problems, and now he's the problem. Then you got Buttons the Bear, a cuddly teddy bear who's obsessed with screwing women. Then you got Rocco the Dog, who was a sidekick on a children's TV show until he snapped. I guess working out Blue's Clues can make anyone snap. And finally you got my favorite, Bill the ventriloquist dummy, who had 58 partners die in quote-unquote accidents. Yeah, Rocco the Dog might be dangerous, but he's nothing compared to Bill. Bill is the most dangerous person of them all, and I gotta admit that's why I like him. To me, the most hilarious thing is that the puppets interact with humans and nobody says anything. Are the humans insane? There are puppets walking and talking about, and they don't say a word. Buttons the Bear has sex with women and the women don't care. Ever since I watched this show, I'm like, do they know they're puppets? Don't they think it's weird that there are puppets roaming around the city? Are there any questions being asked? Come on! But I guess that's part of the comedy. My younger sister and I would watch the show every time it was on. This show is on the list not because it wasn't watched, but because nobody remembers this show. It's like they canceled the show without anybody knowing it, and, well, it dropped off the frickin' earth. It took me 2 years to figure out that this show got canceled. Everybody was watching it, why was it canceled? I guess the show ended with them wanting to be on top like Corner Gas. But don't be so nonchalant about the cancellation of this show. Tell people you're canceling it. But of course, no one did and no one noticed. And people ended up watching Corner Gas a lot more than usual. So if you want to see a dark comedy with psychotic puppets, watch the show. If not, watch the show. If you wonder what Alf would be like if he was a criminal, this show is for you.
Spineless bastards. All talk and no action.
Number 7. Blackadder goes fourth. Yeah, there are a few Blackadder series, but this one's my personal favorite. Yeah, I tried to watch the original Blackadder series, but none of them are quite as good as this one. The Blackadder series takes place in 4 different time periods, and this certain series takes place during a war. Now, before you ask any questions, yes, that is Rowan Atkinson, aka Mr. Bean. Yes, that is Hugh Laurie, also known as Dr. House. Yes, that's Stephen Fry from Jeeves and Wooster and the show Bones. And yes, that is Tony Robinson from, well, the other Blackadder series and some History channels. This certain Blackadder series takes place in the war, again, and Blackadder, played by Rowan Atkinson, wants to do anything to get out of the war. So he tries various plans to get himself kicked out in order not to fight. What a coward, he might as well be part of the French army. But no matter how close his plan is to succeeding, his plans usually backfire and he has to stay put in the war. This guy would do anything to get out of war. His worst is when he shoots a pigeon one day, which turns out to be his boss's pet since he was a little kid. He gets sentenced to death, which would be better than staying in the war. Blackadder's about to be shot to death, but he's saved in the nick of time. You got a great premise and great acting by everyone. Aside from Rowan Atkinson playing the title character like no one else could, you also have Hugh Laurie playing a naive soldier named George. You have Tony Robinson playing Baldric, a useless idiot soldier with a deadpan face. You have Stephen Fry playing an over-the-top general. Then you got Tim McInerney playing Captain Darling, a man who hates Blackadder and is the Dwight Schrute of this show. And his name is the butt of the joke during this series.
Take that down, darling. Yes.
Well, thank you, darling.
What the hell are you playing at, darling?
With comedic talents like this show should have been appreciated more through time, right? Sadly, this show's on this list for a reason. Obviously, the UK is gonna say otherwise, but the US would rather see Rowan Atkinson do physical comedy. A friend of mine got me into the show, and now I appreciate Rowan Atkinson for something more than Mr. Bean. In fact, when I finished this particular series, I ended up liking Blackadder more than Mr. Bean. Well, a little bit more. Trust me when I say this series is definitely worth watching. Especially the end of the last episode. Personally, it haunted me soon after I watched it. So if you haven't seen this show, please put down the Mr. Bean DVDs and watch this. It's worth it.
I'm dead.
Number 6. Spaced. If you think Simon Pegg and Nick Frost came out of nowhere with Shaun of the Dead, you're absolutely wrong. This is the show that they started with at first. A short-lived 14-episode gem, which is brilliantly underrated. Sorry, unfortunately underrated. So the show's about a guy who gets kicked out of his flat by his girlfriend, who is sleeping with his best friend, which causes this man here to find a new place to live. So while he's at a shop one day, he also meets a stranger who also needs a place to live. They talk about what they do for a living. He introduces himself as Tim, an aspiring cartoonist, and she introduces herself as Daisy, an aspiring writer. And after a few moments of talking, they seem to put it off pretty well, as friends. After both fooling around and trying to find a place to live, and with minimal to no success, they finally snap, and they're about to give up. But then they see an ad in the newspaper which gives them a good house for cheap. The only catch is that only professional couples can have it, and because they so desperately need a place, they decide to pretend to be a couple. So after agreeing on a false backstory to make them a believable couple, and taking pictures pretending to be a couple, they go to the flat as a couple, and they fool their landlady named Marcia, who is an old lady and a horrifying chain smoker. After they buy this flat, it's all comic genius from there. It's just pure hilarious. The characters themselves are funny. Other than Tim and Daisy, you got other characters. You got Tim's best friend Mike, who's played by Nick Frost, who's a weapons expert. Then you have Brian, an eccentric artist who lives in the flat below them who uses his expressions to make his art. He seems creepy at first, but he's really harmless. In fact, he starts dating Daisy's best friend, Twist. Kind of a bitch, but whatever, she's funny. And Marcia, their landlady who chain smokes and is heard arguing with her daughter constantly. Also, she doesn't know that they're a real couple while everybody else does, which makes things a bit more awkward. But enough about the storyline. This show is hilarious. I like the fact that this is a British show and yet the jokes are pretty much like American. Plus, almost every 7 seconds the jokes fly at you. You have to watch the show a couple of times to get them completely. And the show itself requires a few viewings to be appreciated. Yeah, it starts off slow at first, but then it gets faster by the time goes on. And the jokes are sporadic. I mean, watch this part. It's just funny. This happens just after Daisy's boyfriend breaks up with her over the phone and tells Tim about it. Now the reason she's telling Tim about it is because Tim told her to be honest to her boyfriend for sleeping around. The following is meant for you to laugh.
Oh, you're evil.
I'm not the deceiver here. I'm not the cheating harpy.
You're so damaged. Just 'cause Sarah hurt you, you feel justified in wreaking your petty vengeance on womankind.
Yes. Yes. And I'd do it again, I tell you. I'd do it again in an instant. Sorry.
That is hilarious. And there's a lot of jokes like that over the series. The randomness just builds on. One of my favorite episodes is when Tim and Mike go to a paintball game. After Mike's ban from paintball was finally lifted. And who else happens to be there?
Hi, Dom. Yeah. This is Dwayne Benzie. Dwayne Benzie.
You stole my girlfriend.
That's right. Tim's former best friend, who's sleeping with his girlfriend, is at the same tournament. And they just happen to be fighting side by side. What follows is pure madness. Hilarious. By the way, I never told you everything about Mike. When I said he was a weapons expert, I meant he was a former weapons expert. And it got him kicked out of the army. When you hear the reason to why he was kicked out, you will laugh. I know I did when I saw it, and I had tears down my face. Another fact of this show, Edgar Wright actually directed all the episodes to the series. The same guy who brought us movies like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. So if you like the movies Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, you will love this show. If you haven't seen this show, watch it. Then watch it again and again and again. So again, please watch it. I'll guarantee it's good for you.
Groovy.